This is another archival upload of some of my previous mix critique videos. I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is 211 to 215. This was sent in by Kyle.
Yeah, living in my head, everything I want to say is nothing that I'll speak out loud. Locked away day after day.
So far it sounds pretty good overall. I really liked what was going on in the intro. You really got that telephone effect dialed in well. It wasn't too much, and then when everything opened up into the actual track, it felt like a really good transition. But just like the last two guys, you're pushing those high mids a little too much. Not nearly as much as they were, but you're definitely right around 2K. You're pushing that a little too far. Other than that, everything sounds really well balanced so far. If you just dip 2K a little bit, you'd probably be all right.
Portraits of my portraits on full display. Personally,
All right, that bass drop going into the chorus was a little overpowering. Try to find a way to get that to sit better in the mix without the low end getting like really way too much. The thing with a good bass drop is you kind of need to make it cut through a little bit more in the mid-range rather than just the sub-lows. Because if you're focusing on just the sub-lows, then it's going to be way too overpowering on any system that actually can recreate those sub-frequencies. But other than that, like I said earlier, it's pretty much just that 2K range is pushed a little much. I think also the cymbals are probably a little too high overall. You got some harsh frequencies in the cymbals specifically, but in general it seems like you're pushing the 2K range too much. Other than those couple things, this is honestly a really solid mix. There's not much I would change. Just make that bass drop fit a little better without overpowering the subs, take out some of the 2K, and fix that harshness in the cymbals. So sent in by Brendan. This intro sounds great so far. The low end of these synths sounds really full and tight. I love the way it sounds already. Let's see where it goes from here. All right, when we get into the actual track, you have too much low end now. Especially the low end and the kick is really overpowering. The bass as well, the relationship between the low and the high end of the bass is not really working for me. You focused so much on the low end of the bass and completely ignored the high end, such that the guitars feel really thin as a result. In metal, the bass and the guitars are like a single unit. They need to blend well together. A big part of the overall guitar tone is the bass tone. And if you don't have any of that upper mid-range bite in the bass, the guitars feel empty.
I think I'm losing it, patience.
The vocals sound fantastic. And again, you've just focused too much on the low end of the bass. The guitars don't feel full, especially in the upper mid-range. Like you're not getting the attack that you need from those guitar parts because the bass doesn't have any upper mid-range. This was sent in by Coda.
They don't want me out in Nashville. They don't want me down in Dallas.
And so things I'm hearing so far, the guitar tone's not great. It's a little thin. It might not be that bad if the bass was where it was supposed to be in the mix. The bass definitely needs to be significantly louder. Other than that, the performances are not tight enough. You should have retracked this. Like the drums are sloppy, the guitar's sloppy. Other than that, it's not as noticeable until the vocals kick in, but definitely when the vocals kick in, everything is way overcompressed.
If you're counting my steps, I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
On this palm muted guitar part here, things are getting a little muddy, like that's a problem. It feels like you're missing a little bit of low end and you probably have a little too much in like the 2.5 to like 4K area. Yeah, it seemed like you were trying really hard to make the whole frequency spectrum like pretty flat. And like, it should be relatively flat overall, but it shouldn't be this flat. Always gotta be a little bit more low end than everything else, and it just kind of slopes down there. Gradually, mind you, it's not like the low end is like 10 dB higher than the high end, but like it's a little too flat right now. It's making it feel kind of sterile, but also in general, just a little more low end, a little less high end. And especially on this palm muted guitar part here, you have to find a way to control the mud. This was sent in by Andrew. main things I'm noticing is things are a little bit muddy. It also sounds like you cut a little too much of the mid-range out of the guitars, but there also might be phase issues in the guitars. If I had to guess, you single tracked the guitar and tried to use some kind of stereo widener to pan it left and right rather than just double tracking the guitar and panning one left and right. That's probably the only thing that would give you phase issues like the ones I'm hearing here.
Find it hard to breathe, thinking about the comments from some.
Other than that, the vocals are a little too quiet. Like, your overall frequency balance sounds pretty good on everything except the guitars, but yeah, the vocals in terms of level could come up a bit. The biggest problem is that guitar. Like, it sounds phasey. There's huge holes in the frequency spectrum of the guitar itself. Music like this, the guitar is what takes up most of the sound. It fills most of the frequency range. You're gonna have guitar from anywhere from like 80 hertz all the way up to like 10, 12K. Like, guitar is the thing that fills out the most frequency range in any kind of guitar-based music. So you need to get that sounding as good as possible. Like, you need to not EQ them so much. You need to not take so many frequencies out of it. Like, you should try to touch guitar as little as possible because it's such an integral part of the overall sound. This was sent in by Brian. Biggest problem here is definitely the guitar. I mean, the bass could definitely be a little bit louder, but the big problem is the guitar. First of all, it's out of tune. Like, it's noticeably really badly out of tune. Like, tune your fucking guitars, man, please. Other than that, just like the tone's not great. It's kind of like a nasally sounding guitar tone, which is just doesn't work. Like, you want the fullest sounding guitar you possibly can. You want to cut as few frequencies out of the guitar as you can, and you definitely made some weird EQ choices on this guitar.
No point to fight it now. Won't try to level up.
You also only single track the guitar and it's in like a weird spot. It's like kind of slightly panned left and there's nothing equal to it on the opposite side. So it's just like, it doesn't sound balanced in the stereo field, which is just on its own not great. It's drawing more attention to it than anything, which with how out of tune it is and with how not great the tone is, you would probably want to not draw attention to it the way that is happening right here. In general, everything doesn't really sound compressed enough, especially the drums, but like, honestly, I can't even begin to focus enough to listen to anything other than that guitar. Like, when the guitar is that off and it's that up front, like, it's gonna distract everybody. That's all anyone's gonna hear is that guitar.